There are places where science ends and darkness begins, where reality fractures and nightmares breathe. These are the tales of Carl Otto's dark anthology. Dark Water, Episode 5, Smoke and Mirrors. The fog hung low over Salt Marsh, thick and slow-moving, a living thing reluctant to let the town breathe. Morning clung to the narrow alleys and sagging rooftops, dimming what little light pierced the clouds. Gulls circled somewhere overhead, their cries distant, brittle. Martellus Vale moved through the haze with the weariness of a man too stubborn to retire and too proud to rest. Ink stained his fingers. His scarf was pulled high. The leather satchel on his shoulder bounced with every uneven step. The streets still glistened with the dawn's wet breath, and the salt in the air stung the eyes. He passed clusters of low murmurs, currents circling around him. Two dockhands lingered near a boarded-up tavern, smoking and whispering. "Moved like fog," one muttered, eyes flicking toward the mist. "Didn't make a sound. Just blood and gone." "Bullshit," the other grunted. "It's just a man. A mad one, sure. But flesh and blood." Vale walked on. Further up, two fishmongers loaded crates onto a rickety cart, heads close. "Saw the body myself," one said. "What was left of it?" "Don't say that," the other whispered. "You want him to hear you?" "Oh, he ain't gonna hurt the likes of us. Goes after thugs, he does." Vale said nothing. The rumors had shifted. No longer whispers of dark water, but stories woven with awe and dread. A man, or something like one, leaving corpses of the wicked in his wake, then vanishing like a ghost. He turned the corner and approached his office, wedged between a fish stall and a tanner's shop. A faded sign above the door read, "The Salt Marsh Broadsheet." The paint had long since peeled, but the words endured. He pushed through the door. The office smelled of wet paper, cold ink, and oil from the old press in the back. Pale light bled through a grimy window, casting long bars across stacked proofs and yesterday's deadlines. Vale stepped inside and stopped. Someone was sitting in his chair. Not a boy, not some overeager apprentice or a ragged thug looking to score. The man was tall and slender, with features carved for cutting rather than smiling. His suit, dark grey, perfectly tailored, held no wrinkle, no speck of dust. Pale skin, hair the colour of tarnished iron, slicked back tight against his skull. Hands rested on the arms of the chair, like a man seated on a throne. He looked comfortable. Vale took a slow breath. "You're in my chair." The man didn't move, didn't look at him. His eyes stayed on the wall behind the desk, where old headlines hung like artifacts. He studied them for a beat longer, then turned his head, slowly. "Mr. Vale," he said, voice low, smooth as polished steel. "Good morning." There was no smile, just a polite stillness, the kind that raised hairs on Vale's neck. "You have me at a disadvantage," Vale said, not moving closer. "I don't believe we've met." He stood, taller than Vale expected, lanky but not weak. There was strength there, lean, precise, the kind that didn't bluff. He stepped to the desk, reached into his coat pocket, and laid down a folded sheet of parchment. The ink on the headline was still drying. "Terror in the shadows. Dark water strikes again." "You're Van Horn's man, aren't you?" Koopmans Vale said. Not a question. Koopmans glanced at him, brief, clinical. "I see my reputation precedes me. And I see you're under the impression this is your office." "It could be," Koopmans said softly. "If you'd like it to be." Vale narrowed his eyes. "Is that a threat?" Koopmans tilted his head, almost curious. "No," he said. "It's a transaction. I'm giving you a story that practically writes itself. A killer in the shadows. A public hungry for someone to blame. All I ask is that you shape the narrative." Vale picked up the paper. The font was flawless. The framing, dangerous. "I print this," he said, "and I stop being a journalist." Koopmans leaned forward. His eyes were grey, not empty, not dull, just hollow, like someone had removed what should have been behind them and forgotten to fill the space. "You print this," Koopmans murmured. "You let Salt Marsh believe what it already wants to believe. Because, Mr. Vale," he stepped closer, "I'd hate to see Salt Marsh lose its broadsheet. Getting information to the people is so important. They'd be lost without someone to tell them what to think." The silence between them thickened. Vale held his ground, but his breath had gone shallow. He'd dealt with dangerous men before, smugglers, blackmailers, war criminals in exile. But this wasn't the kind of danger that stabbed you in an alley. This was the kind that didn't need a knife. It ruined you quietly and left you grateful. Koopmans turned, walking to the door. "You don't have to lie," he said, hand on the knob. "Just give them the shape of the monster they're already afraid of." He opened the door, paused, looked back with that same eerie calm. "And if you're still unsure, ask yourself this. Do you really want to find out what happens when they stop fearing dark water and start fearing you?" The bell above the door jingled once, then silence. Vale stood alone in the fog-thick office, the paper still in his hand. Outside, Salt Marsh breathed low and uneasy. Salt Marsh after nightfall became something else entirely. The fog grew teeth. Shadows thickened. Windows shuttered tight. The cobbled streets slicked with sea brine and secrets. Dark water moved through it like a blade through black silk. He didn't walk. He slipped, as if the space between steps no longer mattered. His long coat drifted behind him like tattered smoke. No breath, no boots, just silence pressing at the edges of the world. "You're slipping," came the voice. Not spoken, pressed, wet and slow against the edges of his mind. Drevar, not a name, a pressure, a presence that coiled around his spine like something with too many teeth. "I don't hunt for your pleasure," Darkwater muttered. His voice was gravel and rust. "Then hunt for your own. You used to." A pause, thick with mockery. "Or have you gone soft again, chasing ghosts of the man you were?" Darkwater paused beneath the skeletal remains of a collapsed overpass, eyes sweeping the alleys. Water dripped steadily from above, echoing like slow knives. "I choose the ones who deserve it, not just anyone. Everyone deserves it." Drevar's laughter slithered into his ears. "You think there's innocence left in Salt Marsh? They'd burn you at the stake if they could. Sell your bones to Van Horn for a bottle of dream lily-laced rum. You're not a man. You're my blade. Let me cut." Darkwater clenched his fists, breath slow and measured. The locket at his chest, tucked beneath layers of shadow, felt heavier tonight. He touched it, just for a second. "You don't get to decide who I become. Then maybe you shouldn't have bound yourself to me." Then, sound shattered the stillness. A scream, sharp, human, close. Darkwater's head snapped up. Another scream, muffled. A woman's voice, ragged, terrified, down the alley. He moved. His coat flared as he turned, vanishing into shadow. Boots silent on stone. Drevar said nothing, but his presence swelled with hunger. "Yes," the voice whispered inside him. "Let's feed." The alley narrowed like a throat, lined with broken crates and damp stone. Fog pooled low, curling around rusted barrels and rotted rope. Lanterns flickered overhead, their glow faint and jaundiced, casting long, crooked shadows. Darkwater moved like a wraith. He found her near the far end. A woman, mid-30s maybe, pressed against the wall. Blood streaked down her arm. Her breathing was ragged, one shoe gone. 3 men surrounded her, thick-shouldered brutes with knives in their hands and rot in their eyes. One of them laughed, dragging his blade along the brick. metal scratching stone. Then he stopped. All three turned. Something had changed. The air had gone cold. From the far end of the alley, Darkwater stepped into view. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The first thug bolted, instinct trumping greed. The other two held position, blades rising. Who the fuck? That was as far as he got. Darkwater moved. One blink, there. The next, on them. Steel flashed. His or theirs, it didn't matter. One knife hand snapped at the wrist with a bone-popping crack. The second swung wide, too slow. Darkwater ducked low, twisted, and drove his elbow into the man's throat with a wet crunch. The woman screamed again. Less fear now. More shock. She turned to run. A figure emerged from the shadows behind her. Koopmans. Immaculate, silent, watching. Koopmans caught her as she passed. Gently, like a dancer taking a partner's hand. Her relief barely had time to register before the blade slid beneath her ribs. Clean, precise, clinical. She gasped but didn't fall. Not yet. She kept running. Koopman stepped back into the dark, wiped the blade. Gone. Darkwater turned the corner, just in time to see her stumble. Her knees buckled. She collapsed into the dirt. No cry, just breath, leaving her like a whisper. He blinked. No one had been near her. No strike, no flash of steel. And yet, there she was. He rushed to her side, crouching low in the filth. Blood pooled beneath her, dark and fast. His hands moved on instinct, pressing the wound, trying to slow what couldn't be stopped. Her lips trembled, her eyes flickered. No, no, stay with me. He turned her gently. The wound was clean, deep. Not the kind of wild slash a panicked thug would make. Too precise. But the alley had been clear. The only ones armed were already down. They didn't touch her, he muttered. She was past them. So who killed her? Drevar crooned. Are you sure it wasn't you, in the frenzy? Or maybe one of them? Last swing, lucky shot. Darkwater's chest tightened. His grip on her arm trembled as the truth clawed at the edge of his mind. Something was wrong. She was running, he whispered. She was going to get out. But she didn't. Drevar's voice was smug now. And that's what the people in the street saw. You, crouched over her, dripping shadow and blood. At the alley mouth, the fog parted. Figures appeared, dozens, some with lanterns, some with blades, others with tools clenched in shaking hands. One screamed, another pointed. They think you killed her, Drevar said, voice thick with hunger. And maybe, in the end, you did. He stared down at her face, eyes gone glassy, blood still warm against his hands. Then the shouts rose, the crowd surged, and Darkwater vanished, lost to the fog, guilt dragging behind him like a chain. The tavern wasn't known for elegance, but Koopmans had requested the back room anyway, a space usually reserved for smugglers, debt lords, or the occasional celebratory wake. Tonight, it belonged to him. A fire crackled in the hearth. Oil lamps glowed soft and amber. The table was set with a meal that didn't belong in Salt Marsh. Braised venison, poached trout in citrus wine, root vegetables roasted in lard and crushed pepper. A bottle of red, imported, aged, obscenely priced, breathed in a decanter. Koopman sat alone. He cut the meat with the precision of a surgeon, ate slowly, methodically, posture perfect. Napkin folded crisp across one knee. He tasted nothing. No warmth, no depth, no joy. The wine could have been salt water, the trout, paper, the venison, ash. But he chewed, swallowed, sipped, performed. Because this wasn't sustenance. It was theater. And power demands an audience, even if it's only your reflection. His reflection in the silver plate stared back with cold approval, still playing the role. Still holding the shape of a man, he unfolded the broadsheet beside his plate, smoothing it with care. Terror in the shadows. Dark water strikes again. Below the illustration, a monster crouched over a limp figure. Just enough ink to suggest blood. Just enough vagueness to let the reader's fear do the rest. Whispers drifted in from beyond the thin wall. They say he killed her, tore her open like an animal. She was innocent, wasn't she? That's what the papers said. Doesn't matter anymore, does it? He's gone rabid. A pause, then softer. He was trying to help. I saw him once. Saved that girl from the red knives. Then why's he hiding? Why'd he run? You think a hero leaves a woman dead in the street? Silence. Then someone muttered, low, almost reverent. Salt Marsh needs protection, not monsters. Koopmans smiled. This one was real. Small, tight, mechanical. The narrative was taking hold. Dark water sat beneath the broken ribs of a collapsed pier, cloaked in shadow and salt. Behind him, the sea whispered, sucking at the rocks like a hungry thing. His coat clung to him, damp with blood. His or someone else's. It didn't matter anymore. His shoulder throbbed where the blade had pierced him, but it was already closing. Flesh knit together in slow, unnatural pulses. The skin still raw. Blood drying in streaks. But the wound was no longer open. It never stayed open for long. He didn't stitch anymore. Not since the changes took hold. A small mercy. One that cost him something he hadn't named. And it was the tremor in his mind that hurt worse. You're unraveling, Drevar murmured from somewhere inside him. The man you were is just skin now. Dead skin peeling off. He said nothing. His eyes locked on a crumpled piece of parchment, wedged between the stones, fluttering like a dying bird. The ink was smeared from damp, but still legible. He reached out, slowly, opened it. The headline screamed without sound, Terror in the shadows. Dark water strikes again. A sketch. Him, crouched over the woman, frozen in guilt. No mention of the men who attacked her. No detail about the knife wound that didn't match his blade. Just his silhouette, hunched like a butcher over the dead. He didn't move. He just stared. Look at that, Drevar whispered. They've given you shape. Finally. I saved her. You tried. A dry laugh. But what matters more? What happened? Or what they think happened? Darkwater's fingers clenched. The broadsheet crackled in his grip. I didn't kill her. You didn't save her either. You could silence them, Drevar hissed. A few well-placed kills. Burn the Inquirer. Cut out the tongues that whisper your name. Turn fear into truth. I'm not your weapon, he growled. You bound yourself to me. I bound myself to justice. Justice, Drevar whispered, is vengeance dressed in priest's robes. He almost gave in. His hand flexed, ready to rise, to strike, to burn. But instead he stood. The broadsheet slipped from his hand and fell into the sea. He turned away. Above, voices echoed from the upper dock. Rough laughter, thick accents, the clink of flasks passing back and forth. He climbed silently, staying in shadow. Two men leaned against a rusted winch, smoke curling around them like mist. I heard Koopmans is bringing in a full hold of Dreamlily tomorrow, one said. Straight from the Silver Coast, untouched. Untouched, the other scoffed. Nothing in this town stays untouched, not with Van Horn's men sniffing around it. No, this one's locked down. Full guard. Koopmans himself overseeing the unload. You know what that means. The first man grinned. Means it's worth more than we'll ever see. One vial of that stuff can make a man forget his name. A crate, that's Empire's. A third voice joined from deeper in the fog. Means someone's about to get rich. Or dead. They laughed, moved on, faded into mist. Darkwater stayed crouched in the shadows, still as stone. Koopmans. Dreamlily. Propaganda. Framed murder. This wasn't chaos. It was architecture. This wasn't just about power. It was about narrative, about control. Someone wasn't hunting him. Someone was rewriting him. "There it is," Drevar whispered. "Now you see it." Darkwater stood tall in the fog. His breath steamed through the mask. His wounds ached, but the fire in his chest had nothing to do with pain now. He turned from the sea and walked toward the trap, not to spring it, but to set his own. The docks were quiet in the way graveyards are quiet, lanterns swaying on iron hooks, the scent of brine sharp enough to sting the eyes. Crates stacked like tombstones. Chains clinked softly in the wind. Darkwater watched from the shadows, perched on the roof of an abandoned boathouse. His wounds had sealed. His body was whole again, but his breath still dragged like smoke. His limbs still ached with the weight of restraint. Below, 6 men moved through the gloom, armed, silent, too precise to be dockhands. They weren't guarding cargo. They were waiting. 6, Drevar whispered, amused. He sent 6. For you. Darkwater said nothing. Then, from the far side of the dock, another figure emerged. Koopmans, sharp suit, immaculate posture, hands behind his back like an admiral watching a tide roll in. He wasn't giving orders. He didn't need to. Darkwater dropped soundlessly to the crates. He didn't wait. He moved. The first man never saw him, just a blur and darkness. Bone cracked against stone, a muffled gasp. The second turned just in time to take an elbow to the throat. Then the third shouted, too loud. Lanterns flared. Boots thudded. The fight erupted like a struck match. Darkwater became motion, non-lethal strikes, disarms, joints shattered instead of throats crushed. He could kill them, easily, but he didn't. He refused. And that's what slowed him. A cry rang out beyond the fight. "It's him!" Townsfolk. A half-dozen at first, then more. Dockworkers, fishmongers, local boys with tools clutched in trembling hands. He's the one who killed that girl. The first bottle shattered near Darkwater's feet, flame bursting out across the dock. The crowd surged, not trained, not skilled, but full of belief. Belief that he was the monster, not Koopmans. Darkwater backed up, deflecting a wild swing from a dockhand's rusted hook. "Stop!" he barked. "I'm not your enemy." They didn't hear him, or they didn't care. Beneath his coat, something shifted. Something moved. Dark tendrils, black as the ocean floor, slick with shadow, slithered beneath the fabric. They twitched like they could taste the blood in the air. One coiled around his leg. Another pressed against his ribs. "Let me in," Drevar whispered, voice thick with hunger. "They deserve it. Let me show them what they're trying to kill." No. He ducked a club, twisted, knocked the man out with the flat of his arm. A second attacker lunged with a chain hook. He caught it, flipped the man hard into the dock rail. More came. The tendrils pressed harder, like snakes straining against skin. Then, Koopmans moved. Quiet, precise. He stepped over a fallen dockhand, past a shattered crate, and there it was. Half buried in bloodied wood and torn rope. A chain, glimmering faintly in the lantern light. He crouched, gently, almost reverently. He pulled it free, studied it, opened it. Inside, a picture of a woman and a young girl. Edges faded with time. Koopman's face didn't change. He slipped the locket into his breast pocket, buttoned it, walked away, unnoticed. Darkwater turned. Too late. He caught a flicker. Silver. Vanishing into shadow. No! A blow struck him from behind. He dropped to one knee. Vision blurred. Blood dripped from his jaw. The dock groaned under the weight of bodies pressing in. "Let me in." Then it happened. A single tendril burst from beneath his coat, a black whip of shadow and fury. It cracked across the dock, sending 2 of the braver townsfolk flying back. The crowd screamed, some scattered, others froze just long enough. Dark Water staggered to his feet, but before he could vanish, a harpoon tore through the air. It struck high in his back with a wet, meaty sound, steel punching through flesh and bone. The force knocked him off the dock. He hit the water like dead weight. No splash, just silence. The townsfolk rushed to the edge, peered into the dark. Bubbles rose, then nothing. The harpoon rope slithered after him, vanishing into the depths. They waited, they watched. But Salt Marsh's harbor, greedy and black, gave nothing back. He was falling, but there was no water, no impact, just cold. Then, silence. Dark Water opened his eyes to a world with no sky, no floor, only depth. An endless, formless sea of black, threaded with glimmers of light that flickered like drowned stars. No horizon, no gravity, only pressure, only weight. The wound in his back was gone, his coat dry, his body whole. But he felt it, the wrongness. This wasn't Salt Marsh. This was the space behind all things. A low sound filled the void, not heard, felt. Like the groan of old timber beneath an ocean's crush, like memory bleeding. And then it appeared. Drevar. Not a figure, not a face, a shape. A sphere of absence. Perfect. Wrong. A hole in reality, blacker than blindness, blacker than death. Void tentacles unfurled from its surface, writhing through the air like they were reaching for something they could never touch. No light reflected off it. No sound echoed near it. It was absence given shape, and it was watching. There you are, the voice said. Not from the void, from inside his skull. Smooth, seductive, inescapable. He stood still. He didn't answer. The void pulsed, amused. You broke. Tentacles slid outward, one brushing his coat, another curling near his ankle but never touching. The temperature dropped, and with it came a memory. Fire, screams. The first deal struck. You let them beat you. You let them steal her from you. The locket, her. A tendril peeled away from Drevar, hissing into form. It unfurled a vision into the air. The locket, it hovered, glimmering, beckoning. Dark Water reached for it, and it burned him. He hissed, pulled back. Not yet, Drevar whispered. You're still pretending. The locket vanished. Dark Water took a step back. Let me in, Drevar said again. Let me make you complete. I'm not yours. You were mine the moment you begged for a second chance. The void pulsed. Reality rippled like a curtain underwater. A tentacle lashed out, fast, then froze an inch from his throat. It didn't strike. It waited. You fear becoming me, but you're not becoming anything. Just a whisper, a myth they mock. Let me give you truth. Dark Water clenched his fists. I made a promise, he said. To her, I'd be something better. The void shivered. A tendril curled around his ankle. Another hovered above his back like a spider's leg. Then, slowly, deliberately, they receded. You forget, Drevar said, calm as rot. You are bound to me. You breathe because I allow it. And whether you fight or not, the void pulsed. Dark Water felt it. The hunger, gnawing at the edges of his soul like rats beneath the floorboards. I will feed. A sound like pressure cracking stone echoed through the void. Reality bent inward. Now go, little ghost. Drift, bleed, crawl through their world again. Dark Water's knees buckled. The abyss cracked, and Drevar threw him. He hit the dark like a body tossed into surf. The skiff moved silently across the black water, pushed by nothing but the current, and a man's need to disappear. Koopmans sat at the bow, still immaculate, though the fog clung to his coat like ash. His gloves were folded in his lap. In one bare hand, something small and silver. The locket. He hadn't looked at it since the docks. Now he turned it over in his fingers, opened it, studied the faces inside with a cold, unreadable calm. The skiff bumped against the shore with a hollow thunk. He stepped off without hesitation. This coastline was different, feral. Twisted mangrove roots, pale reeds that hissed in the breeze. The air smelled of salt, sulfur, and herbs that had no name. A shack waited just beyond the tide line, wood bleached grey by time. No windows, only charms hanging from the eaves, bones, feathers, coins warped by fire, things that whispered when the wind touched them. He knocked once. No answer. He stepped inside. The interior was dim, lit only by a ring of candles, each flame a different hue. Blue, green, violet, one that hurt to look at. She sat cross-legged in the center, behind a table carved from driftwood and bone. She looked like the tide made flesh, Caribbean blood in her bones, stormwater in her eyes, hair coiled like rope, streaked with salt. Her gaze met his, unblinking. "You brought me something," she said. Her voice was low, rich, not a question, a statement. Koopmans held out the locket. She didn't take it. "Not yet. You don't know what you're asking," she said. "I know enough," he replied. She tilted her head. "You think he's just a man wearing guilt like a mask?" He said nothing. "You're wrong," she said. Still, he said nothing. Finally, she reached out and took the locket. The moment her fingers closed around it, the flames in the room bent sideways. Not flickered, bent, as if gravity itself bowed. She inhaled sharply, as if she'd tasted something bitter. "His soul is tethered," she said, knotted to something that was never meant to walk this world. Koopmans raised an eyebrow, but his voice was steady. "Can he be destroyed?" The witch looked at him for a long moment. "No," she said. "But he can be undone." She placed the locket on the table, draped her fingers over it. "You'll need blood, old blood, and a weapon wielding even older magic." Koopmans didn't flinch. "I'll bring both," he said. She smiled then, not kindly. Thanks for watching this latest episode of Dark Water. If this one stirred something in you, drop a comment. I'd love to know what you think really happened, and who you think deserves the blame for all the death in Salt Marsh. Like the video if it stayed with you. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. I've got more waiting. Until next time, remember, not every monster leaves claw marks.